Good afternoon. This is Rob Hendon at CBS News Washington Bureau. I'm joined by Chief Justice Correspondent Bob Orr. Bob, there's some big news out of the Justice Department today. What's going on?
Well, this is stunning news, Rob. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, is going to announce shortly here that he's completely changed his mind. He's given up on the idea of ever trying the 9/11 suspects, Khalid Sheikh Mohammad and others, in civilian courts in the United States. What he's going to do now is put them back in military tribunals, which is where the cases began. And although he hasn't said this yet, we know those trials, that military trial, will be done at Guantanamo Bay. So this is kind of like Groundhog Day and back to square one. KSM and his co-conspirators have never left Gitmo since they've been brought there. Holder wanted to bring them to the U.S. to try them in New York. That met a firestorm of political opposition. Congress even defunded the idea of bringing prisoners here. So now it appears, at least right now, that this is going to be a military tribunal for KSM.
This is a pretty striking reversal. The president, on basically his first or second day in office, said he was going to try to close Guantanamo Bay. And now this, I mean, will it be closed?
This guarantees that it's not going to be closed. I mean, as a practical matter, there's already a courtroom there. You know that. You and I were there. There's a courtroom there. It can handle these military tribunals. But more importantly, if KSM is convicted, and he's already tried to confess many times, so if he's convicted, where are you going to put him? Congress has said he's not going to come here. He's not going to be moved to Supermax, we don't think. So he's most likely going to go back to his cell at Guantanamo Bay until they can figure out where to take him. Now, there's another more curious aspect, and that is if by some off chance, on a technicality, he would be found not guilty, he still is not going to be freed because he would be declared again an enemy combatant. The war on terror, whatever you want to call it, is continuing, and he would go back into interminable hold again. So this is a lot about posturing and some show involved. It's not going to really change his status.
You mentioned we were there. It's almost 3 years ago. We're just talking about this. We were there for the initial arraignment of KSM and his co-conspirators. You were in the courtroom. You saw him that day. What's been happening for the last 3 years after that day? Nothing.
Well,
really. There's
been a lot of political fighting. I mean, the Obama administration's tried to close Guantanamo. They tried to make this the centerpiece trial to prove that they could try Gitmo detainees in Article 3 or civilian courts in the U.S. Congress totally shot that idea down. Meantime, Khalid Sheikh Mohammad's just been in his cell. He has said many times in many forums that he was the mastermind of 9/11. He committed all kinds of other atrocities. He stood up in court that day when we were down there in Gitmo and said, look, I want to be a martyr. I came here today hoping it was going to be today. So this is an embarrassment for the administration, but in the big picture, it won't change a great deal about the status of these 9/11 co-conspirators.
So, but again, no matter what happens, guilty or not, he's never leaving that island.
Well, I mean, it's pretty clear. I mean, Khalid Sheikh Mohammad, the U.S. government is absolutely convinced was a key planner in Al-Qaeda, a henchman for bin Laden. He conceived the whole 9/11 plot, helped put it together, helped direct the hijackers, was involved in a number of other atrocities. There's no doubt about that. People have said, well, he was waterboarded 183 times. Doesn't that poison the evidence? Well, it might under normal conditions, but this is a person where there's plenty of other evidence besides his material statements that prove collectively that he's a bad guy. And on top of that, the prosecution has a pretty easy job here. All they have to do is open the courtroom door, and he's going to walk in and announce that he did it. And I mean, then it's your witness counselor. And finally, the president's going to take some heat from his allies who have said they wanted to close Guantanamo Bay. He ran on this issue. He ran on civilian courts. Did it get to the point that it was just too hard to do that, to do an Article 3 civilian court trial for these guys? I think what the administration is guilty of is not knowing how complex the problem was. It's good campaign fodder to say Gitmo is a bad thing symbolically. It's a recruiting tool for Al-Qaeda. So we need to close that. Well, that might be true on the facts. But politically, it's very, very tough to convince some congressman, for example, to let's put the trial in your backyard, or let's house Khalid Sheikh Mohammad in a prison down the street from where you live. And there was just too much political opposition, both from Republicans and from Democrats, and on top of that, voter opposition in New York saying, we don't want these guys here. What's wrong with leaving them in Guantanamo? And apparently that kind of feeling is going to win the day here.
Bob Orr, thank you so much for the latest, and for the latest, stay at cbsnews.com. Thank you so much.